My parents gave my room to my sister's boyfriend while I worked overtime, so I cut all contact. Now they beg me to return. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and I've always been the hardworking one in my family. Ever since I graduated college, I've thrown myself into my job late nights. Weekends, overtime, anything to build a stable life for myself. While my sister lounged at home, scrolling through her phone or gossiping with friends. I was hustling to make rent, save up, and finally have something that was mine. Something I could call my own. My routine was brutal, but structured. I'd wake up before dawn, grab a coffee, and head to the office, already running on 4 hours of sleep. Lunch was usually whatever I could wolf down at my desk. Evenings were spent catching up on reports or crunching numbers no one else wanted to touch. By the time I got home, I'd collapse in my room, the one place in the world where I felt like I had control. My parents rarely noticed the exhaustion on my face, and compliments for my effort were almost non-existent. But I didn't mind. I told myself I was building something bigger than their recognition freedom. That room of mine was sacred. Posters on the walls, a desk stacked with the books I loved, the soft hum of my old fan. It wasn't much, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a personal space I could protect. Still, subtle tensions always lingered in the air. I'd overhear my parents talking about my sister's boyfriend, how he's such a nice young man, or we should invite him over more often, and I'd just nod from a distance, convincing myself it was harmless chatter. By the end of the week, even after 12-hour shifts, I'd sit in my room, finally able to breathe. I felt proud, almost content, balancing my relentless grind with a small pocket of independence. Life wasn't perfect, but in that little room, the fan humming and the lights dimmed, it felt like I was finally in control. At least for now, it started small. At first, it was just comments innocuous enough that I could brush them off. "Hey, your room is huge. Maybe you can crash there tonight?" My sister would joke, giggling as if it were nothing. I forced a laugh, pretending I didn't hear the sting behind the words. My parents just smiled along like it was perfectly normal. I told myself it's just a night, it won't matter. But nights came and went, and the comments kept creeping in. Every so often, I'd hear my parents in the kitchen talking about how convenient it was that my sister's boyfriend could use my room when I'm working late. My stomach would tighten, but I tried to ignore it. I thought I was being dramatic for all. I was the one working 60, sometimes 70-hour weeks. I reasoned that my sacrifices gave me some leeway, some moral high ground, even if no one else acknowledged it. Even so, I began noticing little things when I got home from work. A jacket left on my chair that wasn't mine, a half-empty drink on my desk, the faint scent of someone else lingering in the air. My room, the one place I could retreat to, the place I finally had control over, was slowly becoming a shared space, whether I wanted it or not. I tried talking to my parents casually. "Hey, can we keep my room?" "My room? I really need it for work and studying," I said one evening, keeping my tone light. "You're always working anyway," my mom said, dismissive. My dad just shrugged. My sister smirked from the couch. That smirk cut deeper than anything else. The realization hit me harder than I expected. No one was really considering my feelings. My independence, my personal space, the quiet sanctuary I'd built after years of grinding it, was being eroded while I was out there giving everything. I had by the end of the week. I found myself standing in the doorway of my own room, staring at the empty walls and my scattered belongings, and feeling the first twinge of real anger. I wondered how long I'd let this slide before it became something I couldn't ignore. I threw myself even harder into work after that week. 12, sometimes 14-hour days became normal. I told myself it was just temporary, that every extra shift was a step toward freedom, toward a life where I wouldn't have to compromise my space or my sanity. But the harder I worked, the further away my family seemed to drift from reality. They lived in a bubble where my sacrifices didn't exist, where my effort was invisible unless it directly served them. My sister, of course, remained blissfully carefree. She'd lounge on the couch when I got home, scrolling endlessly through her phone, occasionally glancing up to say, "Oh, you're home late again. Must be tiring, huh?" There was no empathy in her tone, just a casual acknowledgement, like I was a fixture in the background. My parents, meanwhile, continued to laugh and coo over her boyfriend whenever he came by. "He's such a great kid," they'd say. "It's nice he can stay over sometimes, right?" I forced a polite nod, but my jaw ached with frustration. And then came the first real intrusion. One night, I returned from a particularly grueling double shift, dragging my body through the front door, smelling like stale coffee and office air. As I reached my room, I saw the jacket on my chair again, but this time, there was someone sitting at my desk, casually flipping through my books. "My sister's boyfriend, hey," I said, my voice tight. "Can you, not be in here?" "Oh, don't worry," he replied, smirking. "I just needed a place to crash. You're always working anyway." The words hit me like a punch I wasn't ready for. My sanctuary, the one place I'd built with my own effort, was being treated like a hotel. And the worst part, my parents didn't even care. That night, lying on my bed with the fan buzzing overhead, I stared at the ceiling and felt something shift inside me. I realized that no amount of polite conversation or gentle hints would protect what was mine. Something had to change, but I had no idea how far this would go. I thought the previous incidents were just minor annoyances, little blips I could tolerate. I was wrong. One night, after working a brutal 13-hour shift, I came home completely drained. My body felt like lead, my brain foggy from staring at spreadsheets all day. But I still carried that tiny thread of optimism. At least I'd have my room to decompress. I opened the door and froze. My desk lamp was on, papers scattered across the surface. And there he was, my sister's boyfriend, lounging in my chair like he owned the place. He didn't even look up when I walked in. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice tighter than I expected. "Oh, hey," he said casually, finally glancing my way. "I just needed somewhere quiet to study. You're always out working anyway." I swallowed the lump in my throat, my fists clenching at my sides. That was it. My parents had let this happen, I realized. My sanctuary, the place I had built after years of sacrificing sleep and sanity, was no longer mine. I stormed into the kitchen, needing a mediator, needing acknowledgement. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice shaking, "why is he in my room? I work all day, I pay rent, and you just let him stay there?" My mom waved her hand dismissively. "He's just a kid, honey. He needed a place to crash for one night." "One night?" I echoed, disbelief cracking my voice. "This isn't the first time. This is my room, my space." Dad shrugged, looking between us like it was no big deal. "You're always at work." "It's fine. Don't be dramatic." Oh. The words felt like a slap. My sanctuary wasn't respected. My efforts weren't acknowledged. My parents had sided with her boyfriend without a second thought. The betrayal hit harder than anything I'd felt in a long time. That night, lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling with the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the air, I felt the first real taste of rage. This wasn't just a minor intrusion anymore, it was deliberate, and I couldn't ignore it. Something had to give, but I wasn't sure what I was capable of doing. After that night, I tried to make peace with the situation. I thought maybe a little compromise could work. I started moving some of my things into storage, clearing space on my desk, trying to make it seem like I wasn't attached to the room, like maybe it could coexist with someone else. I told myself I was being practical, that I was protecting my sanity while still giving my family some leeway. But deep down it hurt. Every book I packed away, every poster I rolled up, felt like surrender. Then the visits became more frequent. My sister's boyfriend started arriving in the afternoons, sometimes staying until late at night. My parents would laugh and call it helping him out, while I silently seethed in the background. I began timing my showers, my meals, my quiet moments around him, like I was a guest in my own home. Even small noises, the click of his phone, the creak of my floorboards under his weights, set my nerves on edge. One evening, I confronted my sister again. "Can you not use my room like it's your own?" I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Oh, come on," she laughed, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "It's just a room. You're never here anyway. Don't be so uptight." Her words hit harder than her smirk. That casual dismissal, The complete disregard for my feelings burned more than anything physical could. My parents didn't intervene. They just watched, silently siding with her. As if my hard work and sacrifices were invisible, I started noticing the emotional weight building up inside me, the exhaustion, the frustration, the feeling that no matter what I did, my independence and dignity were being trampled. My room, my one sanctuary, was no longer a place of relief. It was a constant reminder of how little my family respected me. By the end of that week, I found myself standing in the doorway of my room, staring at the empty chair where my desk used to be clear, imagining him lounging there again, and realizing something had to change. Before I completely lost it, I thought I had seen the worst of it, that my room being taken over was just a matter of patience. I was wrong. One evening, I came home earlier than usual, exhausted from a double shift, expecting at least a quiet moment to catch my breath. But what I saw made my blood run cold. My room wasn't just being used casually anymore, it had been renovated. In a way that made it clear, my parents had plans to make it permanent for my sister's boyfriend. The posters I'd painstakingly put up were gone, replaced with generic pictures of landscapes I didn't recognize. My desk had been moved, my chair swapped for one that clearly wasn't mine. And worst of all, my clothes had been shoved into the closet, some stacked neatly, others thrown haphazardly. Like I was an afterthought, I confronted my parents immediately, my voice shaking with rage. "What the hell is going on? Why would you do this without asking me? This is my room." My mom's tone was sickeningly casual. "We're just helping your sister and her boyfriend. You're always working anyway, you don't even use the room." My dad chimed in, equally dismissive. "It's temporary. We just want to be practical." Temporary. My teeth clenched so hard I thought they'd shatter. Temporary. Yet they had gone ahead and dismantled my space. Like my feelings, my effort, my life didn't matter at all. I felt a storm of disbelief, betrayal, and fury building inside me. It hit me then. This wasn't just casual favoritism or minor negligence. It was deliberate. They had decided, without even consulting me, that my room, my sanctuary. The product of years of sacrifice was theirs to reassign. Every late night, every exhausted morning, every moment I'd spent building my life, they had ignored it. That night, lying on my displaced mattress, surrounded by unfamiliar furniture and my own scattered belongings, I felt something shift inside me. I couldn't just endure this anymore. I had to act, but I had no idea where to start. My sanctuary was gone, my boundaries ignored, and for the first time, I felt powerless in my own home. Yet a dangerous resolve was beginning to form. The next morning, I woke up with a tight knot in my chest. I knew I couldn't stay in that house. Not like this. Every corner of my room reminded me of how little my parents cared about me, how my sacrifices meant nothing, and how my sister's boyfriend had taken over the life I'd built for myself. I realized that staying silent had only allowed this to escalate. I had to draw a line, one I couldn't step back from. I packed a bag, careful to bring the essentials and a few personal items I refused to leave behind. The smell of my old posters, now rolled up and tucked away, mingled with the faint scent of cologne from my sister's boyfriend, lingering like a cruel reminder of intrusion. I left a note on the kitchen counter, short and to the point: "I'm moving out. Contact me only if you're willing to respect me and my space." When my parents got home later that day, the tension in the air was palpable. My mom's face fell. My dad looked stunned, and my sister, she just glared. "You can't just leave," she said, her voice sharp. "You're being ridiculous." "I can, and I am," I replied firmly, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've tried compromise. I've tried being polite. My room, my boundaries, my life, they've all been ignored. This is the only way I can protect myself." The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. My parents floundered for words, offering excuses, half-hearted apologies, trying to guilt me with phrases like, "We're family, we just wanted to help." But for once, I didn't let their words chip away at me. I had tasted the cost of their favoritism and realized my self-respect was more important than appeasing them. That night, as I settled into my small rented apartment, I felt a mix of liberation and emptiness. I had walked away, cutting all contact, and for the first time I was in complete control of my life. But the ache of isolation lingered, gnawing at me. I knew this was just the beginning. And deep down, a storm was brewing both inside my family and inside myself. Living on my own was a strange mixture of freedom and loneliness. For the first time in years, I could decide when to wake up, when to eat, what to play in the background without anyone judging, questioning, or intruding. My apartment was small, but it was mine, completely mine, and that felt like victory. No one barged in, no one criticized, and no one treated my space like a hotel. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe, but freedom came with its own weight. Nights were the hardest. I'd sit on my couch, staring at the quiet hum of my ceiling light, and the memories of my old room would creep in the way my posters had been ripped down. My desk rearranged, the faint scent of someone else lingering in my personal space. The betrayal stung fresh every time I remembered. I missed the small comforts I'd built for myself, even if they had been compromised. My parents started reaching out almost immediately: texts, phone calls, messages through my sister. At first, I ignored them. Each notification felt like a test, a trap to lure me back into a situation that had caused me so much pain. I watched as they tried to manipulate guilt, casually dropping comments like, "We miss having you at home," or "It's not the same without you here." The more I ignored them, the more I realized how much my absence affected the family dynamic. My sister started making more subtle attempts to connect, while my parents' messages became increasingly desperate. But this time, I wasn't budging. I had seen too much, endured too much. My boundaries were finally mine to enforce. Even in this new independence, I couldn't ignore the lessons that had surfaced. I began to see clearly how favoritism, unchecked boundaries, and dismissiveness had shaped my family. And while I was alone, the clarity and self-respect I gained were worth the isolation. But deep down, I knew that cutting ties had consequences, and that the storm I had left behind at home was just beginning to gather. For the first few weeks, life alone felt empowering. I reveled in my freedom, in the quiet control over my own space, and the ability to make decisions without anyone undermining me. But then the loneliness hit. Nights stretched endlessly, echoing with silence. I'd sit in my apartment, staring at the walls, and feel a hollow ache in my chest. I missed my parents' voices, even if they had hurt me, even if they had sided with my sister. I missed the routine of home, the familiarity, the chaos I had once tolerated without question. It was during one of these nights that the first pangs of doubt crept in. Did I overreact? I asked myself. Was I being too harsh, too stubborn? Maybe I should just go back. I caught myself scrolling through old photos, family vacations, birthday dinners, small moments I hadn't appreciated at the time. Each one brought a mix of warmth and regret. The sacrifices I had made, the overtime, the effort I'd put into life. What did it mean if the people I loved didn't notice or care? Then came the subtle manipulation from my family. Messages and calls intensified, each one dripping with guilt. "We're family. You can't just abandon us. Your sister is upset. Can't you make an effort?" My inbox became a battlefield. I felt trapped between my desire for self-respect and the crushing pressure of family obligation. For the first time since moving out, I broke down. I sat on the floor of my tiny kitchen, knees to my chest, letting the tears flow freely, feeling completely powerless. I had walked away to protect myself, yet the emotional weight of isolation and guilt felt unbearable. I questioned whether standing up for my boundaries was worth this pain. And in that raw, quiet despair, I realized something vital. I was at my lowest point. But I also understood that there was no going back without risking everything I had fought so hard to claim. Something had to shift, and I had to be ready to face the storm I had set in motion at home. The next few weeks brought an onslaught of attempts from my family to pull me back in. Messages flooded my phone at all hours, calls I didn't answer, texts I ignored, and even emails with long-winded apologies or excuses. Some were tearful, some angry, some manipulative. My parents were desperate. "We didn't mean to hurt you," my mom wrote. "We just want our family back together," my dad pleaded. And my sister, now aware of the seriousness of my absence, sent her own messages, a mix of defensiveness and guilt. "I didn't realize how much this was affecting you. Can we just talk?" Every message was a test. I could feel the subtle attempts to draw me in, to make me doubt myself, to make me feel guilty for standing my ground. The familiar pull of family was almost magnetic. I missed the comfort of the routine, the small rituals, the fact that they had been, at times, the only family I had. But I also remembered the betrayal, the casual dismissal of my sacrifices, the invasion of my room, the disregard for my boundaries. One evening, my parents showed up at my apartment. My heart raced as I opened the door to see them standing there, looking tired and genuinely remorseful. "Please," my mom said, her voice cracking. "We never wanted it to come to this. We miss you. We need you here." I took a deep breath, my fingers gripping the edge of the doorframe. I wanted to feel relief, but instead I felt the simmering power of clarity. "I can't just go back," I said firmly. "Not unless things change. Not unless you respect me, my space, and my boundaries. Otherwise, this will repeat itself forever." They looked stunned, teetering between shock and guilt. My sister shifted uncomfortably beside them, no words coming. For the first time, the weight of my absence was fully hitting them. And as I stood there, calm and resolute, I realized that I held the power, now the control, the choice. The storm at home had begun, and this time, I wasn't the one being battered. The next weekend, I agreed to meet my parents at a neutral place, a quiet cafe, where we could talk without the constant distractions of home. I knew this was my chance to finally lay everything bare, to confront years of favoritism, dismissiveness, and blatant disrespect. I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything. Not this time. I started calmly, deliberately explaining how their actions had hurt me. "I've worked my ass off for years," I said, my voice steady but charged with emotion. "I've sacrificed sleep, free time, and everything I had to create a life for myself. And when I came home, my sanctuary, my room was taken from me, reassigned. And you did it without asking me. Do you understand what that feels like?" My mom's face crumpled, guilt flashing in her eyes. We just thought we were helping." "You thought," I interrupted, leaning forward, hands gripping the table. "You ignored me, my feelings, and my space. You sided with my sister and her boyfriend over me? Do you have any idea what that does to someone?" My dad shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking. "We didn't realize it hurt you this badly. You didn't realize." I snapped, my voice rising slightly. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and you chose to do it anyway. All those years, the sacrifices I made, my efforts, nothing mattered if it didn't serve her comfort. And now, you're shocked that I walked away?" Silence fell. My sister, sitting beside them, looked down at her hands, finally forced to reckon with her role. She opened her mouth, then closed it, words failing her. For the first time, I felt the balance shift. The apology, the guilt, the recognition they were mine to receive on my terms. I had spoken my truth. I had held nothing back. I could see in their eyes that the weight of my absence, the consequences of their choices, was finally sinking in. As we sat there, the cafe bustling around us, I realized something powerful. I had demanded acknowledgement, and for the first time, they couldn't avoid it. The confrontation wasn't just about a room, it was about years of respect, boundaries, and finally claiming my voice. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of satisfaction in the storm I had set in motion. After that confrontation, everything changed. My parents were quieter at first, hesitant to overstep, cautious with their words. My sister avoided pushing boundaries she used to casually ignore, and even her boyfriend seemed to understand, at least enough to stop intruding. For the first time in years, I felt that the respect I'd demanded wasn't just lip service, it was being felt, acknowledged, and taken seriously. Living independently had already taught me a lot, but that conversation cemented it. My voice mattered. My boundaries mattered, and my self-worth wasn't up for negotiation. I began to see that cutting ties, even temporarily, was the only way to make them recognize the consequences of their favoritism and negligence. And it worked. My parents had been forced to confront the reality that I wasn't someone they could manipulate or take for granted. I didn't return immediately, though. I needed space to reclaim my identity fully, to savor the empowerment that came with standing my ground. I visited occasionally on my own terms, setting clear rules for how I would be treated. And surprisingly, they adapted. My parents apologized more genuinely than I expected, and my sister, while still flawed, began to understand the impact of her actions. Sitting alone in my apartment one evening, I looked around at the small but complete life I had built, my furniture arranged exactly how I wanted it, my books and posters reclaiming the space as my own, the hum of the fan and the quiet of independence. It wasn't just a room anymore. It was a symbol of my journey from invisible, disregarded, and manipulated, to empowered, respected, and in control of my life. I realized that boundaries weren't just about physical space. They were about self-respect, dignity, and the courage to demand better treatment, even when it hurts those you love. I had learned that sometimes you have to walk away to make them see what they've lost, and sometimes you have to break the patterns of a family to finally find peace. For the first time in my life, I didn't just survive, thrived. And as I closed the door to my apartment that night, I felt a quiet but fierce sense of victory. I had my life back, and no one could take it from me again.